Fine. Good afternoon. My name is Phoebe Bendel, and I'm a Senior Policy Advisor at the UK Department for Transport, working on sustainable aviation fuel. I'm going to be running through UK policy and incentives for SAF, and just wanted to say thank you to IATA for their really detailed presentation, which set the scene well for this. Next slide, please. So I'll begin by talking a bit about the UK's Jet Zero strategy to set our approach to SAF in context. Next slide, please. So the Jet Zero strategy, the UK's Jet Zero strategy sets out our overarching approach to achieving net zero emissions by 2050 for UK aviation. So this strategy includes a range of measures to achieve this, including rapid development of technologies like SAF, to reduce emissions while maintaining the benefits of the aviation industry. This graph on the slide depicts the expected carbon abatement from each measure in our high ambition scenario in the Jet Zero strategy out to 2050. So SAF is the green bar. It's expected to contribute 17% of the required carbon abatement in this scenario to meet our net zero target by 2050. Next slide, please. So this just emphasises that SAF is one of 6 key measures in the Jet Zero strategy. These also include system efficiencies, so improving the efficiency of the existing aviation system and working to have all airport operations in England to be zero emission by 2040. Also working on zero emission flight. This is being supported through funding, and we aspire to have zero emission routes here in the UK, within the UK by 2030. We're also working to maintain and strengthen the UK emissions trading scheme to incentivise aviation decarbonisation. And we recognise that there is some crossover between the UK ETS and CORSIA routes, and we're working through this at the moment. And also just to note that we will be legislating for full implementation of CORSIA this year in UK law. Also, we're ensuring consumers can make sustainable travel choices and are considering how to address the non-CO2 impacts from aviation. Next slide, please. So to deliver on our aviation decarbonisation commitments, we work very closely with a range of stakeholders through the Jet Zero Council. This is a partnership between UK government, industry and academia, and it works to drive the delivery of new technologies and innovative ways to cut aviation emissions. The Council has the aim of delivering at least 10% sustainable aviation fuel in the UK fuel mix by 2030, and zero emission transatlantic flight within a generation, meaning these are real priority areas for the Council. Next slide, please. So this slide provides an overview of the structure and membership of the UK's Jet Zero Council. You can see it's chaired by a number of UK government ministers and also includes senior leaders from across the industry. And you can see a snapshot of the membership here, which includes key government departments, airlines, aircraft and engine manufacturers, and oil majors. Next slide, please. Now, to come on to UK government policy on SAF, having set the scene for our wider aviation decarbonisation policy. Next slide, please. Thanks. Our overarching aim here when developing policy and incentives is to prepare the UK to be a global leader in the production, development and use of sustainable aviation fuel, and we work very closely with industry to achieve this. Next slide, please. So for the UK to be a global leader in SAF, we work towards 3 main objectives, and these are to create secure and growing demand for SAF. So our primary mechanism to do this is the UK SAF mandate. Mandates have already been mentioned by IATA, and I'll cover each of these policy mechanisms in more detail in future slides. We're also working to kickstart a domestic SAF industry. To do this, we have provided over £135 million of funding towards the development of SAF plants here in the UK through our Advanced Fuels Fund. This supports our commitment to have 5 plants under construction here by 2025. And we have also set up a UK clearinghouse to support the testing and approval of new SAF products against those industry specifications that were also mentioned earlier. Finally, we're working to secure long-term investment in the sector. We're working to put in place a revenue certainty mechanism to help secure the price of SAF by 2026 to bolster investment confidence. And we are working with industry to remove further barriers to investment in the meantime. Next slide, please. So why are we supporting SAF? To take a step back for a moment. So as captured in the Jet Zero strategy, SAF can reduce aviation emissions to support the UK's legal net zero commitment. SAF is made from low carbon feedstocks, such as waste oils or forestry residues, which can achieve life cycle emission savings of over 70% against conventional jet fuel. And as demonstrated, we expect SAF to contribute 17% of the required carbon abatement for aviation here in the UK out to 2050. There is also strong potential to support economic growth and jobs here as the SAF industry scales up, as indicated by the figures shown on this slide. SAF also has the potential to support our domestic fuel resilience, which is really important nowadays. Next slide, please. So to inform our policy interventions on SAF, we have been listening closely to industry and continue to listen closely to identify risks that may prevent investment in SAF and growth of the industry. The key risks highlighted to us are, firstly, a lack of clear policy direction into the future to guide the industry as it develops. Secondly, uncertainty around supply and demand for SAF. With this industry at a fairly early stage, the supply is still needing to scale up. This obviously relies on strong demand, so there's a little bit of back and forth there that needs to be worked out. Also, revenue certainty for investment in SAF production, so shoring up investment confidence to secure the long-term investment the sector needs. There are also challenges around technology and the high costs associated with constructing new SAF production plants. And finally, feedstock availability, which has already been highlighted, particularly for those biomass feedstocks, which are in limited supply, particularly the oils and lipids, and these may become increasingly limited as we go forward. Next slide, please. So I'll now go over our policy and incentives in a bit more detail. So starting with the UK SAF mandate, which is our core mechanism to drive demand for SAF and will obligate fuel suppliers in the UK to provide a certain proportion of fuel from sustainable sources. This starts in 2025, so will be implemented from then. We have a target for 10% of jet fuel to be made from sustainable sources in 2030. So to note, the UK mandate will only support fuel that meets our sustainability criteria. These are really that we will only support SAF made from waste and residues, recycled carbon fuels, and power to liquid fuels. There will also be a minimum carbon intensity reduction for SAF. And there is no condition on where the fuel originates from, as long as it meets our criteria around sustainability and carbon intensity reduction. And we do expect imports to meet some of the mandate obligation. So the mandate will really shore up demand while also supporting the growth of supply through the incentive of certificates with a cash value for SAF that is supplied. And the mandate will be designed to support a diverse range of feedstocks and production routes by capping those that use the most in-demand feedstocks and including an obligation for power to liquid fuels. And the final design of the UK SAF mandate will be confirmed shortly. Can I have the next slide, please? The Advanced Fuels Fund grant programme has committed £135 million to support SAF production plants through the project pipeline to reach an investment-ready stage. This programme provides grant funding to first-of-a-kind commercial and demonstration-scale projects in the UK at all development stages up to construction starting, such as front-end engineering and design. So this grant funding helps to address technology and construction risks associated with these plants. It supports our ambition to have 5 SAF plants under construction in the UK by 2025, which will help secure supply. And this fund also helps to address feedstock risks by helping to develop a diverse range of SAF production routes. So we're not just supporting a single pathway. Next slide, please. So in November last year, we launched the UK Clearinghouse as a hub to support testing and approval of new SAF products against industry standards so that they can be used as a drop-in fuel in aircraft. This is done through providing advice and guidance around the testing process and requirements and offering some funding for eligible fuels to be tested. And in this way, we're trying to help innovative fuel pathways move closer to readiness and address technology and feedstock risks through greater diversification. And the UK Clearinghouse is working very closely with clearinghouses in the US and in the EU to promote this work globally, as it's in the global interest to progress testing and approval of new SAF. Next slide, please. Finally, the UK government has committed to delivering a revenue certainty mechanism to bolster investment confidence and support the growth of the UK SAF industry. And we intend for this scheme to be industry funded. We'll shortly be launching a consultation on the options to design and deliver this mechanism. And next slide, please. So having gone through our domestic policy programme, we build on this by collaborating internationally on SAF. And I'll now go through our objectives and activity in this space. So what are our objectives when engaging on SAF internationally? Overall, we want to see a thriving global market for SAF and therefore want to enable all states to participate in its development and uptake. So we seek to help build the global market through incentivizing the scale up of SAF production and sending a clear demand signal globally. This will help set a feasible trajectory towards achieving net zero aviation by 2050. We also want to ensure that robust sustainability criteria are applied globally so that SAF will lead to meaningful carbon savings without compromising the environment. Next slide, please. We have supported key international agreements on aviation decarbonisation, including the long-term aspirational goal, or LTAG, that was mentioned previously. This was agreed by the global community to reach net zero carbon emissions from international aviation by 2050. We also supported the achievement of the global quantified target of 5% reduction in carbon intensity from aviation fuels by 2030 at the third conference on aviation alternative fuels last year, through use of lower carbon fuels like SAF and LCAF. Next slide, please. The Carbon Offsetting and Reduction Scheme for International Aviation, or CORSIA, is a key mechanism to offset emissions from aviation, and it requires airlines to keep them at 85% of 2019 levels, and airlines can use SAF to meet CORSIA obligations alongside other means such as offsets. So at present, the UK participates in CORSIA along with other states that have volunteered to participate and to be in scope at this stage. From 2027, CORSIA will apply to all states with some exceptions, and the UK government will be legislating this year to fully implement CORSIA requirements in UK law. The scheme has set out eligibility and sustainability criteria to avoid unintended consequences, which is really important, as has been highlighted. We actively support the progression of CORSIA, and we work through ICAO to ensure it continues to be effective in these aims. Next slide, please. The ACT SAF programme is intended to provide capacity building to developing states to support them in building SAF capability where they may be at quite an early stage in this journey. So through this programme, the UK has committed to providing direct capacity building, and to date we have provided direct training to 3 states under this programme, and we'll be providing more with sessions planned to Cameroon and the DRC. The UK has also made a voluntary contribution to the ICAO Environment Fund, and this enables feasibility studies on SAF for those states at the beginning of their SAF journey, as highlighted. This is obviously really important to make sure all states are able to utilise SAF to help meet that long-term aspirational goal. Next slide, please. think this was highlighted briefly earlier as well. International financing is another important area of focus. Developing states will need support to access financing for projects such as SAF production plants and infrastructure. And without such support, states will face difficulty in delivering on the long-term aspirational goal or utilising SAF to support that. So ICAO has proposed creation of a hub to support developing states to access investment and funding. This is only at the scoping stage at the moment, but the UK is actively supporting the proposal, and we hope to make progress before the next ICAO assembly in 2025. Next slide, please. Finally, we also engage bilaterally on SAF extensively to support the development of SAF in different states around the world. For example, the UK has signed MOUs with Spain and Singapore on SAF to underscore our joint working in this space. And we have worked closely with other states, such as the US, looking at SAF investment. Our bilateral engagement usually focuses on promoting the development of SAF industries, sharing knowledge on policy and how it's worked for us, and facilitating partnerships, for example, in the academic and industry space, and also promoting the highest sustainability criteria. We're exploring further opportunities for engagement with other key states, always keen to engage bilaterally. Next slide, please. So going forward and coming back to the forum we're in today, what do we ask of the international community to build on this work? In summary, to build on our ambition to see a thriving global market for SAF, the international community can really support us by, firstly, encouraging states to introduce appropriate regulatory frameworks to support development of SAF globally to robust sustainability standards, facilitating investment in SAF globally to support the scaling up of this industry, and also ensuring robust accounting systems for SAF. This was highlighted by IATA as well, to avoid double counting of emission savings and help set a kind of effective global trading environment here, so there can be confidence in emission savings from fuels and environmental credentials. So we're keen to expand our work with international partners, so welcome contact if you would like to engage and have not yet done so. And just to go on to the next slide has my contact details. Thank you very much for the opportunity. And that's me done presenting.
Thank you very much, Phoebe. That